My name is David McCallum. I'm the Vice President of Mission and Development for Lemoyne College in Syracuse, New York. I'm a Jesuit from the United States Northeast Province, and I'm here working for the Council of European Provincials in this Ignatian Leadership Program. You know, it's natural that miscommunications are going to happen and challenge teams, but there are so many ways in which people can, in a sense, escape the challenges and the problems if they slow down, in many ways, their communications and start to test the stories that they're making up. We would call them assumptions. Assumptions are just a natural part of being human and making sense, but often we rush so quickly from assumptions to beliefs to actions, and then we get ourselves stuck, right, in problems with others. So if I'm running a meeting and someone in the meeting starts to do something that confuses me, for instance, if someone's constantly checking their watch, I'll think to myself, well, maybe they feel like they have someplace else they want to be. And I might take it personally if I'm, that kind of person. And as a result, I might get aggressive with them, which might, and then, create more behavior that is really unhelpful for the process, for the meeting. But we do this assumption making all the time. We do it when we receive an email that has ambiguity and we make up a story about what people are really intending. We see people in the context of teams sometimes do something that would just seem not quite clear in terms of the motives. And if we don't really know that person well, we'll make up a story about why they did that. One of the things that's helpful when we're communicating is to establish some sense of mutuality. So even if a leader has authority and positional power in an organization, they want to work in a collegial way with those who report to them. And one of the ways to do this is to establish mutuality by a very careful and thoughtful communication practice called the 4 parts of speech. We use the 4 parts to frame, to give context for where we're coming from, to advocate a position or to express an opinion or to share an experience. We illustrate the 3rd step and give examples for why we think the way we do or what assumptions we're holding. And then we invite the other person to be part of the conversation by asking their opinion, their perspective, or even to challenge the assumptions that we're holding. An example of the 4 parts of speech. Let's say a situation involves my assistant, my personal assistant. She might have left something on my desk that was meant for my signature, but because my desk is not exactly as organized as it should be, I lost track of it, and she didn't follow up. So the conversation might go something like this. Nina, I really appreciate how you gave me that document to sign. However, if you might have noticed, my desk was not exactly the best place to leave it, and I lost track of it, and we had a real problem with this arrangement we needed to make. And as a result, I'm asking you if you would make some other kind of arrangement. If you really want me to see something, sign it, and get it back to you, how about leaving it on my chair instead? And that's an invitation for her to say, well, I understand, I don't understand, you should have done X, Y, or Z otherwise. It invites a kind of back and forth conversation. In a globalized context, and certainly in our Jesuit ministry world, it's natural that we're often working with people from distinct nationalities, ethnicities, and sometimes religious beliefs in our institutions. It's very helpful to be able to understand not only the cultural traits and styles and preferences of other people, but to also know our own. It's much easier to spot the differences in another person than to actually understand how we ourselves operate and reflect a certain culture. As an American, for instance, I might tend to be more expressive, more direct. I might tend to be more flamboyant in my speech and enthusiasm about things that I like than someone from a culture, for instance, that's Northern European, and would tend to be a little bit more, let's say, neutral. about things that they enjoy doing, or a little less direct in the course of conflict. In order to understand these things, sometimes it's helpful to have a model. And for the purposes of our time together, we've used this Lewis cultural model, which sees nationalities and ethnicities on a grid based on attention styles, how we express ourselves, how we engage in conflict. And as a result, we have a little bit more sense of the diversity and the variety of cultures, how people see and make sense of the world, how they express themselves in heated situations, or just when they're socializing. As a result, it helps to form a kind of lens, not only to appreciate differences, but to see how those differences can actually add to the effectiveness of our teams when we harmonize them. I would say that if a person is tending to use their culture as an excuse, this is a kind of avoidance of the kind of important flexibility that we need to strive for in pluralistic and diverse workplaces. And as a leader, I definitely cannot be fixed in my cultural preferences. I have a special responsibility to meet people where they are and to help them in many ways adapt to an appropriate kind of culture or ethos in the workplace. For instance, it might be very acceptable in one culture to talk about people in a somewhat gossipy way because that's in some ways an expression of concern. But in a professional workplace, that wouldn't be so acceptable. And it can also lead to lots of issues of triangulation and ultimately confusion and conflict. As a leader, in order to develop a team, I think it's helpful to remain conscious and intentional about the fact that we have tasks and goals to achieve, but we also have relationships to maintain. And if a leader tends to have a tendency to go one way or the other very strongly and to miss those other values, they might, for instance, tend to be so goal-oriented and concerned about maintaining a deadline that they don't worry about the relationships with the folks who are working with them and for them. As a result, we can find ourselves in all kinds of trouble. But that goes both directions. A person can be so concerned about maintaining the social morale and the sense of fun in a workplace that we don't get things done. So it's about balancing those things. I would say it's very helpful at the beginning of a project when a team is forming to spend time getting to know each other, to actually forming trust and some agreements about how we work together, as well as clarifying what's the purpose, what are the distinct roles we have to play, and what is the task we have to accomplish. I think that if a leader brings a concern for the development of the team alongside with their desire to accomplish their goals, they're going to keep track of both outcomes and the quality of relationships. And that means that you have to be intentional about process, about inclusion. That means even the mission and the vision should be part of a conversation that involves key stakeholders. And that brings people into a deeper level of commitment. It also brings people into a deeper level of creativity around how to address complex challenges. And that's what we're facing today, both in the Society of Jesus, the church, and society. We need diverse perspectives. We need to be able to harmonize people with broad and different skill sets working across sectors to collaborate together and address challenges. So if leaders bring that concern both for outcomes as well as for people and process, they're pretty much guaranteed the results are going to be better for everyone as well as for achieving what they desire to make happen. You want to make time for people to get to know each other. Sometimes we rush too quickly to get something done, and as a result, we miss the important process not only of building relationships and rapport, but also a kind of elasticity so that people can give and take feedback and understand better that feedback is part of a performance improvement process, not some kind of a personal agenda to make people feel bad. Once people build that tolerance and elasticity of relationships, so much more can be accomplished and often so much more quickly. It facilitates decision-making when people trust each other and know each other well. I think another thing is people want to have fun together. They want to enjoy their workplace. And we have a great opportunity as Jesuits and lay people working together to enrich the quality of our ministries by working collaboratively. People feel joy as part of something bigger than themselves. And we want to create the place where no matter what a person's role is, they feel the joy of being part of a mission that's meaningful and that is somehow transformative for people who have great needs. I think that generally there's a cliche, but it holds true, that there's no I in team. In my experience of the Jesuit world, we are taught, even as we live in community, we're taught to be very individual and autonomous performers. We are taught to excel in the classroom as teachers or as administrators. We work in parish ministries, often as the chief of our own little fiefdom. But as a result, I don't think that we're always as well equipped for teamwork as we need to, where interdependence and mutuality and often flat organizational hierarchy is more the norm. As a result, we have work to do. When a person has a tendency, not necessarily egotistical, but to do their work on their own and according to their own standards, it's a challenge when that person is then asked to work in a team with many other people with different perspectives, different skill sets. This is something that has to be developed. I would say that in our church these days and in the world, our society is facing such complex challenges that the only way to really address them is to bring diverse folks together in teams, interdisciplinary, cross-sector, cross-cultural teams, to work together to articulate visions and solutions. We have a long way to go, but we also have a tremendous unrealized potential in the Society of Jesus, rooted in our Ignatian spirituality, rooted in the brilliance of Ignatius's constitutions and the thoughtful principles he has for how to organize people in a mission-driven way to achieve goals. I would love to see us achieve that potential. And that may be years off, but I think in some parts of the Society of Jesus, we're actually beginning to mature our ability for Jesuit to Jesuit collaboration, Jesuit to lay collaboration, and to working across apostolates. And that's, I think, a reason for hope.